Welcome to our session. We have a very interesting interview going on with Worldwide Technologies, Nate McKie and Tony Peretti. We're going to talk all things AI coding agents and how customers are taking advantage of this great technology that's available to them today. I want to introduce Nate McKie and Tony Peretti. Nate is Senior Practice Development Leader at Worldwide Technologies on AI and all things digital. And Tony is the Chief AI Advisor, also from WWT. Guys, welcome to the call. Looking forward to the conversation. I have a lot of history and experience with WWT. I'm a big fan. They're one of the largest systems integrators in the world. But for those of us who may not know WWT as well, care to tell us a little bit about WWT and some of the things you do to drive value for your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. Worldwide Technology is a global technology solutions provider. So our core business has been around being a value-added reseller of hardware and devices and network solutions and data centers, all that kind of thing. But we have a very mature and long-running services capability around anything you can imagine in technology, whether it's digital, security, cloud, automation, AI. So we've been all over how to make the technology work for you, and we've definitely dived in on the world of generative AI and specifically what we're calling AI native engineering around things like AI coding assistance.
Excellent. So let's jump right in. Talk to me about AI coding agents. How did AI agents come onto your radar? What prompted you to explore them and get involved in that technology? What types of tasks are customers using? Like what's working in this space?
Yeah, my background is in software engineering. So I came to Worldwide because a company that I founded that did software engineering services was acquired by Worldwide. So as soon as generative AI came along, and we saw the power of what it could do with code, uh, my team immediately got interested in what was going on, started playing around with these tools and trying to figure them out. And when ChatGPT 3 came along and the hype really hit, I was telling everyone I could, hey, we need to look at what it's doing with code and how AI can work to help the software engineering process because this is going to be huge. And I think ever since then, there's been momentum and interest in how to use this both internally to build, applications for ourselves, but also seeing this as really a revolutionary way that it will change software engineering and the whole software development lifecycle for everyone.
Absolutely. There is no question that there's a lot of hype and interest around generative AI and all the things that it's capable of doing and the value that it could potentially bring. But that brings me to my question around where is the value? How do you currently measure or assess the impact of AI for your customers, leveraging coding agents? And can you share any examples of how specifically it's accelerated projects or solved difficult problems? Or any surprises that you found when you're working with your customers regarding leveraging this exciting new technology?
Yeah, I can start with one that we have a relationship with the Special Olympics here in the United States. They have an event this June, and they asked us to help them with their mobile app that is going to be the companion for what everyone is working with throughout the Special Olympics. And we talked to them about that engagement. We estimated it, but it was really before we started using coding assistants. And once we got started, we decided to use these tools, and the customer was on board, and we got everything done that we had intended to do in the entire contract in about half of the contract time, and we're able to just pile on even more features. And that's when it really got our attention when we're seeing that the entire team moved twice as fast as they would have before using these kinds of tools. And we've just continued to see that kind of story replicated across multiple clients that we've been working with, as well as the work that we've done for ourselves. So, uh, seeing the power of just getting some of the software development work and grind out of the way, and
So
being able to focus on what it is that you're trying to accomplish has been just amazing for our teams and for our customers.
That's a very exciting story and a great example of a productivity enhancement. Tony, any thoughts on value creation as it pertains to leveraging AI for coding or generative AI in general?
Yeah. Uh, yes, Jam. And complementing what Nate has said, I believe that using AI and coding assistants per se actually gives everyone superpowers. And with superpowers, great responsibilities do come out of it, of course, as they say. And as we keep seeing more and more tools being released in the market, we see a lot of confusion coming out of it. So, but nothing is better than having a responsible developer, responsible team, or the right tools behind the scenes and the right partners to take you in this journey and have the right ecosystem surrounding you. And as we are blessed to have Tim Brooks, I would say in one of his publications that the bubble above the bubble has already burst. So AI is here to stay. So let's be productive. And I think the example that Nate has shared is a key example on of results, high ROI, and how to free time from our teams as well to do more exciting content.
Absolutely. Very well put. I think, given the productivity enhancements and the speed at which we can execute projects and deliver value for our customers is obvious, but it brings up the concerns around security. And we all know the expression trust but verify. I think when it comes to generative AI coding, it could be verify, then trust, because there's a lot going on there and there's a lot of code being generated that we need to make sure that we're guiding our customers, verifying their code, and then solving the issues that they may be presented with. Talk to me a little bit about your customers' primary security concerns when it comes to developers using AI coding agents. How do you ensure that they're not introducing vulnerabilities? Just some of the standard concerns that customers might have around giving away a lot of that toil to agents working with agents and all of the productivity enhancements. There's the reverse side of that coin. Talk to me about a little bit the concerns and how customers are planning for that.
Yeah. Before the agentic coding really came into vogue, a lot of our customers were asking about can we run this on prem, because their concern was seeing their code, which they see as core business IP, being thrown out into the cloud in some place that they didn't know exactly what was going to happen with it. Is it going to be used to train models? Is it going to be stored somewhere? And it was hard for them to know. And so, there were a lot of customers asking about that. Now, once the agentic tools came into play and you saw the power of what these coding tools could do with, with agents and being able to write and create entire features in your system, the power of that and the savings of that was just way too tempting. And understanding that it just wasn't feasible to try to pull all that in on-prem and have all the machines that you would need to be able to run that kind of capability. That concern lessened. I think we still have customers who say maybe we're not ready for this because we don't know if we want to go and have all of our code being thrown out to the cloud that way. But the power is just too tempting. So now it's more about well, what's it creating? And are we creating security vulnerabilities in our code? Are we doing things that are poking holes in what we do? You hear the scary stories out there about the vibe coders who created an application, and once it started gaining popularity, someone came along and found a way to take advantage of it, to hack into it, to take control, and they don't want that either. So it's definitely something that there's a concern around, and something we end up having to talk to customers about.
Absolutely. Great point. It almost, for some of us that have been around the industry for a while, it goes back to that story of the retailer that was hacked because their HVAC system was on their network, and the subcontractor that was working on the HVAC poked a hole into or they were accessing the system, and then a hacker got to them. And we haven't had that retailer moment yet in generative AI, but without putting policies and guardrails and vulnerability protections in place, we could certainly see the opportunity there for a bad actor to try to take advantage of that. Which brings me up to my next question. How do you help customers manage that risk around their proprietary code or sensitive data being sent through the models? And what policies or guardrails or tools even would you recommend to help them kind of secure that wild west of code that's being generated out there in their environments? And Tony, feel free to chime in as well.
Yeah. You want to start with this, Tony?
Yeah, happy to. So you start with the basics, I would say. It's very cliche to say this, but Nate and I are very much is about data governance, knowing where your data resides, knowing where your controls are, knowing what you want to do with this, and making sure the right level of access is there. So you can only be two things of this. You can be compliant and have high level of governance, and you're gonna protect your intellectual property as well. And there's no harm on doing this. Many, we're all developers at the end of the day. We still being developers. We gotta create content where we generate our own tables or our own snippets. We want to be fast. Of course, we want to be this fast. We want to occasionally see the solution online, copy the verbatim that is ready on Stack Overflow or anywhere else, and compile this. But really, would that really make me fast, or will we slow down my cooperation per se? So let's say stick to your gut instincts. Those compliance trainings that we go through, those security, still adding a lot of value. They are there for a reason. And surround yourself with the ecosystem that does that, so nobody can poke holes into your organization, into your deliverables, and also on your professional credibility. There's all at play. Yeah, you can escalate fast, but you can fall very fast as well. So have some bases, be strong, and survive the temptation not to be too fast, but be just fast enough.
Yeah. But Nate, let's expand on that a little bit. There's one thing to have tools in place to help developers validate their code, secure their code, make sure that it's free from bugs and vulnerabilities, et cetera, et cetera. But really, doesn't it come down to having policy across the entire dev organization and using top-down kind of strategy to say, we're going to use XYZ across everything to ensure, because if you have it in pockets, there could be still these other groups that aren't using it. So talk to me about, how you position tooling or strategy or overall adoption to make sure that you protect the critical core source code and, the IP of our common customers.
Yeah, absolutely. With great power comes great responsibility, right? So when you've got these tools and everything that they can do and that they're capable of, you have got to have, a process around how to use them properly. AI is fantastic. It is not ready to be completely trusted by any means. And so there needs to be some kind of review going on. Ideally that's a human that's taking a look at it, an experienced person that's looking at what's going on and reviewing it and saying, yep, that's good to go. But depending on the volume of what you're creating, that may not be completely feasible to look at every single line of code. So organizations need to have, if having humans review it is not feasible, then you've got to have tools in place to be able to make sure that this is happening well. There's tools to help you with review. There's tools that will review for you, as you well know. There's lots of great options out there to help you out. So we've already, I don't know, you remember from Silicon Valley, the show, the Son of Anton episode where they unleashed AI into their code base and suddenly features were disappearing and issues were happening here left and right. We've literally have customers coming to us now saying, we handed off a tool like Claude Code to our engineers, and suddenly we lost a feature and we don't know what happened to it. We don't know, we didn't realize it was gone until well after it had happened. These things can really happen. So you've got to have, discipline and tools in place to make sure that you are protecting your organization if you're going to use this tools with this much power.
Absolutely. I could think of a fantastic tool that can help customers with that. It's the concept of shadow AI, right? I think we all remember back to when cloud started to get more widely adopted around customers, and business units inside of customers were swiping their credit card and spinning up instances all over the place for whatever app they felt like they wanted to self-source. And you had sprawl of all this cloud spend going on inside of customers. And partners like WWT would go in and say, do you really know what you're spending on your cloud and why and where? I think the same type of phenomenon is happening with the accessibility of generative AI tools, where customers are just downloading a generative AI tool and trying to solve business problems. And you have this sprawling, everyone becomes a developer all of a sudden. And now you have all this AI sprawl that's happening. So when we talk about the impact on customers, there's really another interesting phenomenon going on as it pertains to the actual developers that are either using the tool or helping them with toil and their day-to-day activities. Talk to me about how AI agents have changed your customers' development workflows and the impact they have on the devs that they have in their environments, and how you see that role evolving over the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. We refer to it as the software development lifecycle is still there, right? All the elements of that still need to happen, but we're seeing this hourglass effect essentially, where what was kind of the middle, the core of the life cycle is shrinking because it's getting so fast to be able to actually implement in code whatever it is that you have to do. And but all that sand has to go somewhere, right? It doesn't just disappear. You just end up spending more time on the front end and the back end. You spend more time thinking about what you want, making sure that you've defined it well, that you've thought through all the different aspects and implications, and then you spend more time at the back end, as we just said, reviewing it, verifying it. Did this actually happen? Did it create another issue that we didn't anticipate? So it changes the job for a software engineer. They go from their core skill being memorizing algorithms and code languages and how to put things together, to thinking about a problem on a system level. What is going on here? What's going to happen? Should this get moved through the system? How can I both advise and guardrail the AI to make sure that it does this and does not create unintended consequences? So it changes the job. I mean, on some level, I think that's exciting for people who really love the problem solving aspect, the architecture aspect of software engineering. I think others are going to struggle. They're going to see that and say, but I liked being the one that was an encyclopedia of knowledge about, the right code to use, or how to make my code as efficient as possible. And those skills are kind of going away. I think I don't see us having fewer software engineers in the future, but I do see us having fewer people who are just really good at memorizing algorithms and code functions, being part of that software engineering land, because it's really going to change how you work with the machine.
Very good point. Absolutely. I'm seeing the same thing with when I talk to customers. They're like, the role of the developer has taken all of that intellectual property in their mind and saying, use this to validate what the AI agents have generated. So yes, you went away from actually hitting the keyboard, but now you're putting a different lens on the code that was created. So we still need those core skills. Tony, any thoughts on the AI generated development cycle and how the role of developers is going to change?
Yes, well, one point that I would say is the concern that I do have, when you analyze productivity versus morale of a software developer. They're going through the journey, exactly what Nate was describing. The person that was the encyclopedia of knowledge, now thinking, oh my gosh, I don't necessarily have to memorize those classes anymore. I don't have to necessarily to tell this story, or how do we start with Pascal, COBOL, and God knows what came through it. How was the migration from X to Y? Or even if you do look oh, is my morale going to be affected by this? I don't think so, because the onboarding has become incredibly faster. Is it amazing? I think we all been around the block for a while, and we know how long it took for you to get onboarded into any organization in the past. So what would that be? What, 1, 2 weeks, depending on, and this I'm talking 10 years ago. But what I'm trying to say is like, is more time spent on design, integration, and validation. Is less time spent on onboarding. Is that battle between debug versus right. So where are we going now? So how do we find what is the right level of balance there? We're gonna have the human in the loop. We're gonna have our strong developers doing it with the, I would say, intelligence, human intelligence or cognitive intelligence, and the corporate intelligence as well to know when is change phrase, when do we have to publish, when does this feature have to be light, what do we prioritize. So they're still essential to make this work, for the ecosystem to work. But I think there's a shift in efforts from typing to verifying.
Yeah.
And I think this is nicer, isn't it? How many of us do not know today, actually, rather than typing a message, actually dictate? And humans are way faster in dictating and talking, such as myself, than actually typing. And I think this goes hand in hand, completing the message that Nate, Jin, you were trying to get here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. And as we're talking about, the use cases for generative AI and the value that creation that it creates for customers, and then we're kind of pointing to the thing that Sonar does best, right? We talk about code quality because at the end of the day, you can invest tens of millions of dollars into an AI infrastructure and all the capabilities to go really fast and have a competitive advantage in the market. But if you have issues in the fundamental core of your code, it's not going to matter if it gets onto your shiny new AI infrastructure because an outage is an outage and it'll just be a faster time to outage. So Sonar does a really good job in the code quality space. That's really our domain. Let's talk about how you would characterize the quality of AI generated code versus human written code. What types of like bugs or issues or vulnerabilities are you seeing when your customers are coming to you to help them solve their thorniest problems? And have you seen any patterns? I know, Nate, you gave me a great example the other day about two different customer scenarios that were leveraging AI agents to develop code. One had a pretty low acceptance rate, one had a very high acceptance rate, and you commented to me, I think they're both not great. So talk to me about the difference in the way that code is being created, AI versus humans. What kind of things are you seeing as far as issues or bugs or vulnerabilities, and how a product like Sonar can help customers solve those thorny issues and get to their AI outcomes and value faster?
Yeah, sure. When you're using the kind of autocomplete functionality in of coding assistance, you're fine. Like you're gonna get what you need. You're gonna see where the issues are. It's where you start using agents to create entire modules or features that you start to see the real problems, because AI is going to by default be verbose, do more than it needs to, touch things that it has no business touching, pull in libraries that maybe you didn't want to have as part of your code base, repeat itself, not try to create efficient code that if something's been done in one place in the application, it's gonna be happy to rewrite it somewhere else. So it's going to create bloat. It's going to potentially create, slowdowns in performance because you're pulling in more than you need to. And it's going to create confusion in just trying to figure out later what's going on. Now, one of the great things about these tools is that they can explain, here's what's going on with the code base. But what they can't do generally is say something like, hey, this is what it's doing, but that's pretty inefficient compared to the way it's being done, or different, the way it's being done elsewhere in the application. It doesn't know how to make that kind of judgment. So you could end up with a lot of duplication, a lot of excess code that you don't need in place. There's a ton of issues that can come about. And the right way to use AI, which is counterintuitive, is to constrain it, is to say, here are your boundaries, here are your limits that you can work within, and then set it on its way and make sure that it stayed within those lines. And then again, as we've said, check its work. So, that I think that's the key thing we try to emphasize to new engineers, new customers who are experiencing this is keep in mind your job as the human is to rein it in because AI's got a lot of capabilities to do a lot of things. And just if you give it free rein, it will go out there and make a mess. And so, how do you figure out how to pull it in and keep it focused on exactly what it is you're trying to do?
Excellent point. Well, we're coming up on time here, so I wanted to first, before I ask my final question, thank you both so much for sharing your day with us, and encourage our customers to reach out to WWT. They're experts on sonar technology. They're experts on AI, both from a code and from an infrastructure standpoint. And what a valued partner they are for Sonar. So I want to thank you for that. Any closing thoughts or final recommendations you can make for a customer that's evaluating, they're dipping their toe in, have a corporate mandate to go leverage AI everywhere? Just any closing comments or thoughts or final messages for our customers out there that are looking for help and trying to get value out of this AI wave that's coming at them.
Tony, you want to start?
Happy to. And thanks for the opening again, Jim. We so much appreciate your time and inviting us for the session. It's very much a pleasure, especially as we are in the forefront, not on the cutting edge technology, but bleeding edge. As we move perhaps a little bit faster than the market. That's what I've been doing for those last decades. And it's so good to be here once again, being ahead of the curve. And talk about being ahead of the curve, that's what we do. Have a few offerings that helps clients and everyone to actually get this bleeding edge, be ahead of the curve. And what I would call we have something called AI studios or AI studios, native engineering that we do have also that would help you to start slow, 2-3 use cases, right, Nate? Get high repeatability, test, upgrade it, refactor the documentation, and then you move to another stage that will be a foundry, perhaps, and we build it. We can help you build it, or we can build it ourselves. And then when you're ready to scale, we do have the AI factory. So the set of propositions that we have, but again and again and again, and have result and high ROIs and tangible results. So this would be my closing remark before handling over to Nate. I would say standardize your tool set, and make the most out of it. Become so strong that you're gonna win with consistency and also with trusted ecosystems and ecosystem and partners. And we are here for you very much. Nate, the ball's in your court. Go for it.
Sure thing. Yeah, again, Jen, this was great. Appreciate the chance to talk about these things. This is always fun. It's something that I'm passionate about and excited about. Jevons paradox says that if there is something of value that you can do and it gets cheaper to do that thing, that you don't do less of it, you do more. You don't just pocket the savings, you do more of that thing. I remember, do you remember back in the day when it was this battle between HD, DVD, and Blu-ray and who was going to win? And then, because it became so cheap to send data over the wire, that entire issue went away. Because we could send entire movies over the internet, which at the time seemed crazy. When it becomes cheap to do something, you just do a lot more of that thing if it's got value. It's going to be the same with software. If it is easy and cheap to build software, you're going to see software absolutely everywhere. It's going to be cheap to try something new, to prototype, to figure something out, to just, you have an idea, just go ahead and put it out there, see what happens. It's going to really, pervade everything that we do. And with that, we have got to, at the same time, figure out how to do this responsibly. We've got to create software. We can't let this get out of control. It's going to be so simple for anyone to build an application. we need those policies in place. We need tools like Sonar to help us do that well, as we're proceeding along this journey. And so, I would just encourage any organizations thinking about this. Don't just think about today. Think about a future where you're going to be developing software constantly, quickly, for every possible purpose. How are you going to make sure that that is done safely within your organization?
With compliance, right? Some of these highly regulated industries, you're going to have proof that you know, and it's a great testament to innovation, but also responsible innovation. So again, I want to thank you so much for your time. If a customer is interested in engaging with WWT and wants to harness the power of one of the world's largest integrators, how do they find out more? How do they act on some of this great innovation that you guys are providing?
Absolutely. If you go to wwt.com, you can search for coding assistance. You can search for AI for developers, is kind of what we're calling it on as a topic on our website. Lots of information there. Some of the podcasts that we've done, articles, but then also ways to contact me or other folks on the team directly to talk about what's going on with your organization, and let us know how we can help.
And if you want to buy Sonar, you can buy it from WWT and they can help you
Absolutely right.
make the most out of the solution. Well, I want to thank you again for your time. We really appreciate the partnership, and let's go deliver value for our customers together. Thanks again.
Let's
Great. Thanks,
keep
Jim.
doing it. Thanks, Jim.